Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar video. This one is going to be my Korra fan commentary track for Book 2 Spirits Episode 7, Beginnings Part 1. I will be reviewing both episodes of Beginnings, but obviously for the sake of the commentary, I do have to split them up into two parts, just so you can actually keep track of it, just because I don't know what version of an episode, what you're going off to do it, so that's why I have to split the two of them up. Otherwise the transition between one and the other would probably put us out of sync if I was to do it that way. So yeah, continue to keep your suggestions for episodes coming in, but yeah, to sync up your copy of the episode with my commentary track, have this episode, so Beginnings Part 1, ready to go, including the intro. I believe the intro here with the Korra one specifically starts with a really brief Nickelodeon thing, then we get the intro for Korra, so have it ready to go right at the start there of the kind of episode file. And when I stop speaking as part of this introduction to the video, there'll be about a 10-second pause, and then when I come back after that pause and start speaking again, that's when I will have pressed play, that's when you should press play, and we should be synced up within a couple of seconds of each other. So I'm going to stop speaking now, hit play when I start speaking again. Okay, so here we are with K207 Beginnings Part 1. First part of obviously a two-parter here as we explore the origins of the Avatar, the introduction of Avatar 1, and it's significant to the overall story because here is our introduction to Raava and Vaatu, which will later be obviously explained with harmonic convergence, and it's important that Korra learn this stuff at the same time as we as the audience learn about it, because this is stuff that we really don't know about, so we need to learn a lot more about the spirit world. And I think this is so well done. Beginnings Part 2 is my favorite episode of Korra. Beginnings Part 1 is still a very, very strong episode, and I rate it super, super highly, so the two-parter overall is just incredible for me. But definitely I think Part 2 is the superior part, but there's no real issues that I have with Part 1, just that the bigger stuff happens in Part 2. But yeah, we start off here, Korra, after her injuries, loss of the battle against that giant spirit, brought to Bonti Island, which she washes up on here. She doesn't remember anything. Serena Williams voice acting there again. But yeah, she's saying the name Raava over and over again. And yeah, very cool new firebending power we've never seen before or since. She doesn't touch Korra with the flames, but can sense that her energy, there's something wrong with the energy within her body. So it's like a chi sensing firebending technique, which is very, very cool. Just like a non-combat firebending ability. Water has healing. You can sort of say seismic sense for earth is one of their sensing abilities. And then very cool that fire has one also for the shaman here and the fire sages back there. But yeah, this is great here. Korra doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know she's the Avatar, so it's her completely learning about the Avatar full stop again. We go from herself back to Aang, then of course to Roku, Kyoshi, Karuk, and then Yang Chen isn't featured here because of course Aang is the air Avatar before her, so Yang Chen sort of drops out of the four just prior to Korra. But it's just so great. I love the chain of the Avatars and stuff like that. And yeah, she has to reconnect, and that involves going right back to the start. Love getting to see Karuk, just learning stuff about him. Really hope the Shadow of Kyoshi, the second novel, explains some more about the past with Karuk. It looks like it's probably going to feature some stuff, so that should be very exciting. But yeah, here we go. Wan, we obviously got the name Raava there once again. That's the name of the spirit that makes the Avatar. And yes, the first Avatar. And this story, a lot of people were wondering what this is. This is not at all, I don't agree at all with people who say that the origin of the Avatar is a story that should never have been told. It should have remained a mystery. They went too in depth and stuff like this. I don't really agree with that. I think the Avatar is such an integral part of the Avatar world. I thought it was absolutely essential that we learn how it works. And it's not overly complicated. I think it's perfectly well done and fits in with exactly what we know, and is the Avatar universe is better that we have this story rather than if we didn't. So yeah, we see Juan stealing from the Chu family. And, like, obviously at this point we don't know a lot of the specifics, but, like, okay, Juan seems like he's not as well off within this city as the Chu family, which is obviously the higher-ups. He's stealing from the rich. Right now it seems just for himself, but we obviously find out in just a second that he's basically gives all of this away to animals and his friends. Like, he is selfless, but it's definitely not this idea straight away that you think this is the guy who's destined for greatness. This guy's going to be the first Avatar. Especially after this first sequence. It's just like... So it's like, okay, like sort of skilled, running along the rooftops. Like, he's kind of athletic, but that's about one of the only traits you really see in him right now. But then straight away, he goes back to where he lives. You see that, like, they're just living in this hut in a tree. Not great at all. There's Jaya there. They have to steal to survive, basically. About the only thing they have there is Juan's teapot in the background. And here is Yao, and this sort of shock reveal here of like, whoa, what happened to him? And obviously in a couple of seconds, like, basically one of the next things he says is going to be about the idea that the spirit did this to him by, like, jumping inside of him. And they have to explain that spirit possession mechanic, because that effectively is what the Avatar state is. It's a spirit inside a human, kind of their energy pulsing through the human. And in other cases, that's what happens. Juan drinking from the Juan teapot. But yeah, he gives it to the animals, he gives it to the others. None for himself, just has some tea here. Don't get banished because the spirits will attack. And we're in the physical world here, so it highlights again the spirits are sort of in the ascendancy. If you go outside the city, they're just spirits out there. That's different than the world we know. And yeah, the world is the way it is. Some people have power, some people don't. And it's about how Juan, despite not seeming like the person who could, ends up bringing a big change to the world. Through just, I suppose, in a way, just taking in the world around him and not having such preconceived notions of the spirits and actually kind of opening up a dialogue with them and, trying. Whereas the others aren't so much. But yeah, he considers power and he knows the way to get that, which is from the line turtle. What the origin of bending actually is. So they're going to go out on the hunt here. This is how they get the food, of course. And yeah, like, I know a lot of people have talked about how, like, oh, this contradicts Avatar, it's the animals that are the origin of bending. But it's like, you have to look at it from a technical point of view, and that nothing in Avatar ever specifically stated that the reason non-benders and humans are different is because animals directly imparted, like, this energetic thing to a non-bender to turn them into someone who could now do bending. That was never a thing. Here is where we learn about the actual origin of where the ability of manipulation of stuff via chi comes from. The animals are still absolutely 100% included in this story. It's just where the technique comes from. The technique you channel that power through. Those animals have that ability as like a raw thing, so they know how to use it to its best ability. So of course the humans learning that form from the animals helps them to use the ability more than just, I'll shove my hand out and use my hand like a flamethrower. That's a bit blunt. It's not the most effective way to use it. It's sort of effective to protect yourself, but it's not exactly proper bending. It's just fire throwing, basically, than fire bending. But yeah, this is his plan to kind of go on the hunt, get the ability, go back, but he's told, give it back to the line turtle. It's only lent to them to go out on the hunt, to protect themselves while they're out there in danger. Which brings up the idea, why are the line turtles protecting humans at this point? Why is it like the era of the line turtles here? Why have they specifically given themselves this task of protecting humanity from spirits and not just being on their own, letting humans figure it out themselves? And this is where it's so interesting, in that the line turtles effectively play the role of the Avatar prior to the introduction of the Avatar. they're keeping balance in the world by not allowing humanity to just basically fade out of existence, which they probably would if they did have to defend for themselves on the outside and weren't protected by the line turtle. But yeah, Juan is going to inspire them here. He has the power. They all put their masks on, and just one person just, willing to step up, he feels can make a change against these one higher up wealthy people, the leader of the city, against the rest of the people who are sort of, struggling in a way. And obviously it ends up failing here, sort of highlighting that like he probably was a little bit too kind of violent, a bit too quick to do this. He meant well, but he acted too quick, too hastily here. Just highlighting that it's still a young Juan. He hasn't quite, again, not really the actions of like the person you'd expect to be the Avatar, but there's elements of the character that the Avatar to be here. Just that idea of like someone who could make mistakes, and that's why it was important to not have the first Avatar just be this perfect character. Someone who can inspire people, but someone who is capable of making mistakes, and then you give them a power to actually truly make a change in the world, and with some kind of wisdom and approach to balance. And that's the main thing with Juan, is that his willingness to actually speak with the spirits is probably the main thing that really makes him worthy of the title. I see that's probably the most fancy firebending that we see anyone do prior to actually learning from the animals, is that ring of fire. But it's still sort of brutal, like borderline out of control. And yeah, he's brought out before the Elder Chu here, as well as the Lion Turtle, to face judgment. Chu obviously gives the judgment, and then the Lion Turtle kind of deals with how he will deal with the bending that he has, the power. And yeah, he's just banished here for this. He caused an uprising. He's not going to sell out his friends and all of this, so they're okay. But of course he asks to be able to keep the ability. He understands why it's needed on the outside, so can I keep it to protect myself? And since he's not allowed to ever return, he becomes at this point the first like permanent bender, basically. And the entire thing throughout this is probably like, it still presents the idea that the Lion Turtles are now the big sort of discussion point. Like, what's up with the Lion Turtles? I already talked a little bit about, why are they doing so much for humanity at this point in time? Giving them the ability, taking it back, protecting them, and then leaving the second one actually becomes the Avatar and makes a big move. And it really speaks to like, they are this like legendary creature. Like we go back 10,000 years to this episode, and they're there, more prevalent here, but we learn more about them and their powers, and the spirits have us respect for them. The spirits don't go near. They don't go inside the Lion Turtle cities or anything like that. What is that respect? Because Rava, as we'll see, calls the Lion Turtles in the next episode sort of like ancient ones. So even among the most powerful and oldest of the spirits, the Lion Turtles are considered like an ancient being. So super, super intriguing and interesting. And yeah, you can see the danger here. If he didn't have firebending, he'd probably be dead there within the first couple of seconds. But he learns. These aren't just like obstacles he faces, overcomes, and then forgets about. In a couple of scenes' time, we'll directly reference some of those things he encountered just there. And I think that's the significance of Juan. He kind of learns from these things, whereas the other hunters have been out there tons of times, probably defended themselves from spirits a lot, but haven't learned a thing in a way. They're just out there to get food. And Juan, who just kind of gives it a chance basically out here. After, of course, like a very fraught, couple of incidents here. He's borderline on the verge of just collapsing kind of mentally here. And yeah, haven't talked about the art style, but it's really great. I like that it's still the same, ultimate quality of animation as the rest of it, but I love how they do more sort of traditional, like old kind of style for some of the backgrounds and how they show bending. It really helps to just make it look that little bit different to highlight how old it is. But here's Ai, one of the cooler spirits, and this is the benefit here. Like, this is what you need when you're doing stuff with spirits. You need a spirit who's willing to talk. and not just be the, like, you know, the one with the big grumbly voice who just says, you know, lowly human, go away. You need characters as spirits, and I think that's what we're sort of encountering in the Korra comics right now, are a few too many spirits who have the attitude of just humans looking down on them, when what we need is just a spirit willing to give humans a chance and humans willing to give spirits a chance. And I think in Korra right now we have a lot of humans willing to give them a chance, but not a lot the other way. And I hope we can eventually come back to it, because that's the big thing that Korra needs to accomplish. Now that she's brought spirits back into the world like it was here, with more of an opportunity for peace, can she create a balance between humans and spirits, where there's an equality between the species, races, whatever you want to call it, humans and spirits, in both worlds? It still feels a little bit like the spirits are allowed into the physical world, but humans aren't really exactly allowed into the spirit world. Still not a lot of balance, that the spirits still feel like they're the higher ups. Yeah, he was banished. And yeah, the others feel sorry for him, but Ai is just like, just go to one of the other ones. And he's like, huh? There are other line turtles? There's other cities? That's how disconnected humans are from each other. They don't know that their city isn't the only group of humans. Like, this is earth-shattering for Juan at this point. And even for us as the audience, it's like, oh, like, that wasn't just that one line turtle that Aang encountered, like, all the way in the past. There's multiple. Like, it's pretty incredible. And yeah, I'd love to see Ai return. I think they could do it, like, because, like, spirits, obviously, we know can be killed, can die, but they always just kind of almost regenerate into a new form. So it'd be cool to see Ai again, but maybe him looking slightly different. We need a character like him to sort of be more of a friendly representative of the spirits, to actually have sort of like discussions about what is balance between the two. But yeah, here's Mula the cat deer, Juan's spirit, kind of animal guide, I mean. And yeah, I like that they do this. They include this in the origin of the Avatar. And I think they do this mainly because, of course, in the same episodes that we basically introduced the idea of, like, Aang has to go see Roku's spirit, they introduce Fang, like Roku's dragon spirit. So there's a connection, a spiritual, like, Avatar connection with the animals. So they had to kind of do an origin story for the idea of an animal guide as well. And we saw that Juan cared about the animals before. He gave some of his food to them earlier on. So him just coming across this cat there and, like, suddenly deciding, oh, I'll protect this animal when I didn't do it before. No, he actually did care about the animals before. They came to him. They felt safe enough around Juan and his friends. So it's very well kind of constructed, well written, that is a part of Juan's character. But yeah, he fell into this earlier on. He jumps over it. And then the hunters who've been out in the spirit wilds before, completely taken by surprise by all of this. Whereas Juan, just a little bit of experience, feels like a pro out here. And again, you see it's very basic firebending. They're just like doing, you know, basic blasts. And there's power to them, but there's not a lot of control. But yeah, there's spirit possession happening directly in front of us. And you can see the energy coming off it. And that, like, if Ai was just a spirit of light, it would look exactly like the Avatar state. Because this is what's happening, basically. But yeah, if Ai stayed in him more, he'd be killed. But because Ai is a kind of got a look to him, he has a unique look. He's not just light. He morphs the appearance of that guy. So cool dynamic. And from the Turf Wars comics, we know that in some cases it can lead to the human actually sort of becoming more powerful, because they get like a physical trait that actually adds to their sort of physicality. Spirit water, healing, and yeah, take over a human body for a short time, but they'll die if they stay in too long, which is the whole dynamic of Rava and Juan. Once they start to get going, working together, the Avatar state can only be used for a certain amount of time, the sort of pseudo-Avatar, proto-Avatar state, as we learn about in the next episode. But yeah, carrot guy in the background, best character in the show, of course. That spirit's great. This green guy here is great as well. And yeah, Juan's just like, you seem okay, actually. I'm just going to stay here and learn from you guys. And Aya's just like, okay, you're a friend of the animals. Okay, we'll try it. He gives him a chance. Juan gives them a chance. And look what happens. And it's this progress here, this friendship, this dynamic. This is why this is going to be the person who will become the Avatar. He's already showing that level of balance. And as we're going to see, more of a balanced approach to the species than even Rava. So they find out Wan is alive, thriving outside of the city, doing better than they would have expected, and it inspires them. And here we go. Wan now can do the martial arts. He looks like an actual proper bender now because he learned from the dragon. He didn't get the raw power to manipulate fire from the dragon, but the way he manipulates it, he learned from the white dragon, an extension of himself. And that's the way to view it, basically, is that when you can use your element manipulation as if it's an extension of yourself, that's really when you can call yourself a firebender, an earthbender. Before that, you're just doing the basics. You're just using a elemental manipulation technique. Bending is when you do it with form, is I suppose the caveat. So Oma and Shu are the first ones to learn from badger moles. They're not the first actual earthbenders. They're not the first earth manipulators, earth movers, whatever way you want to call it. So yeah, they're all inspired to kind of leave the rule of Chu and go on their own. They take fire, some of them. And I suppose you have sort of the birth of the Fire Nation here to a degree. But the difference is that they're not all Wan. They still have that sort of fear of spirits. And we see the issues that kind of arise because of this as we go forward. Highlighting how different Wan is, the fact that he was able to accomplish what he did. But yeah, he has to go out in his own to experience what the world is like. Find these other humans. Learn about it. Love the music here. The Korra soundtrack needs to be released, if not just to get the soundtrack from these episodes. Some of the great art, the different style in the background here, beautiful. And yeah. And here we are, the spirits specifically referring to other spirits as being all-powerful spirits. So there's a hierarchy here. That there's those type of spirits. There's kind of, I suppose, the ones directly above them, which I suppose would be the likes of Heibai, Wan Shi Tong. And then above them are these two, Rava and Vatu. So here is the introduction of the Avatar spirit and its kind of dark counterpart. And I've always thought this was a fantastic reveal. And I think why it works so well, and why I don't really agree with what a lot of people say of just like, oh, the introduction of these two just like simplifies everything down to simple light versus dark, good versus evil. It doesn't allow for any like, characterization. Like the Avatar is just good by default. But it's like the Avatar was never really going to go down a dark path. Regardless, I think that's just the way it was always going to be. They're the guardian of balance in the world. Like it's always a nice sort of fan theory, the idea of like a sort of dark or grey Avatar, but like it's one of those ideas you sort of have, but then like they probably wouldn't execute it that well. So I like this concept instead that yes, the spirit that the Avatar has inside them is the spirit of light and darkness, and light and balance and peace. But what's done so well, especially in the next episode, is that it is about the character arcs. Like Wan represents balance between humans and spirits. Rava doesn't really at this point. She looks down on humans at this point. Like she doesn't really have a lot of time for humans at this point, even Wan at this point. And she learns from Wan, which she does because she gives Wan a chance. And that's the significance here of like Wan is a more developed character than Rava is at this point. He has to learn about the specifics of the world, of course. But he's more complete. The spirit that is the Avatar versus the human that is the Avatar. Which one is more like the Avatar as we know it at this point? And it is Wan. And I think that's what's so significant here of like you get them both learning from each other. The just timeless wisdom of this spirit, and then the sort of idealism of Wan here. And it comes together to make this kind of approach to peace and balance that is the approach that we know from Avatar, that Aang, Roku, all the other avatars have, and it stems from here. That yes, prior to them separating, it was a battle between light and dark for the fate of the world, but now that you've introduced this human element into it, it does change things for it to be different, and it introduces that idea of, you know, now the power that is, you know, peace and balance in the world can be affected by the mistakes and like emotions of a human, but with the sort of potential bad comes the amazing positives, as is evidenced by the way they do the dynamic between Wan and Rava, of even an all-powerful spirit like Rava being able to learn some lessons from someone like Wan, learning about like learning respect for an entire species, I suppose, effectively, for humans from him, and to the point where at the end of her life she is willing, at the end of Wan's life, she's willing to stay with him for every reincarnation that he's going to go through. That shows the impact that he has on her, and it's done so well. Of like, Wan is inherently linked to Rava because he wants to make up for this mistake. He tried to help what he thought was a spirit who was being sort of, you know, kept captive and stuff like that, didn't have freedom, and in separating them creates this chaos in the world. And I think this is the other side of this dynamic that I think a lot of people who try to simplify this down to just like, oh, it's just light and dark, is that dynamic of what light does when it's in the ascendancy versus what chaos, darkness does when it's in the ascendancy. And chaos, of course, actively tries and does everything it can to cause more chaos in the world and actually taint everything and switch it to also being chaotic. The difference, though, is when light is in the ascendancy, it just lets things be. It will stop chaos from happening. But then once things are back to sort of normal, there's no sense of like, join the society of light, you know, kind of force a specific idea on people. It's more of just allow peace so that the world can kind of do what it does. And then if an issue arises, then tackle it, rather than chaos, which is the other side of things, always taking the offensive. And I think that's the difference here, and why the whole kind of idea of, I think, what people were maybe going for, thought it might have been of just like, oh, it should be this kind of grey thing where true balance is 50% light, 50% darkness. And that's an interesting view on it in some cases, but I think it's hard to do properly. So I like that the way Avatar does it, of like, it presents the idea of it can never be 100% darkness and it can never be 100% light. Like, you need one to exist, even in the smallest amount, for the other to exist. But it is about the approach, because the spirit of light and the spirit of darkness are beings in a way. One wants to escape, one just wants to sort of contain the chaos so that it's not actively impacting the world. That's the dynamic of, like, the reason that the two of them are fighting is because, like, Vatu is constantly trying to escape and impact the world, whereas if Rava had complete control, the idea in many ways would literally just probably be that she would just have hold Vatu down basically next to the Tree of Time, and that would be it. They would have very little impact on the world if Rava was allowed to actually just be in complete control over the two. Like, she would not be going around and like going to every spirit, turning it into like a beacon of peace and light, and everything's just, you know, happy, fun all the time, like Vatu ends up doing. Vatu goes around, turns every spirit he sees dark in order to swing the balance all the way to chaos and do what he wants to do. And I really love the way they do it. So yeah, next commentary is of course going to be for Beginnings Part 2. How could I do this first one without doing the second one immediately afterwards? It's my favorite episode. I have to do it. I did get a suggestion for the episode, so I immediately took it, of course. Any opportunity to talk about beginnings. But yes, like I always say, continue to send in suggestions for what other episodes you want me to do of Korra and Avatar. But yeah, give me your thoughts on Beginnings Part 1 in the comments. But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.